Good evening and welcome to Socrates Garrett Live. We're broadcasting live right here in Jackson, Mississippi, in an African-American owned and operated broadcast studio from Jackson, Mississippi, in the heart of the Deep South. Now, Mississippi is not a large state. I often say that, most of the people in Mississippi are related. We have the highest number of mulattoes of any other state in the nation. That's because we are all related in one way or another. And so today is a very special day for me. I'm going to be talking about my experience in the United States Army and what that was like for me. Now, if you're watching us on YouTube, then we want you to go on and subscribe to this program. It's critically important that you support the program. If you're watching us on Facebook, then we want you to send us stars, follow us, and call us at 800-492-5186. Enjoy our clips and reels that are on Instagram. So we're trying to get out there the best way that we can to bring you relevant information that you won't find anywhere else. You see, Mississippi's rich history gives us more content than any other place in the world when it comes to black people and how they were treated in America. It's important that we share that history in defiance of our state leaders who says that critical race theory will not be taught in Mississippi schools. We passed a law to ban critical race theory, even though nothing was being taught in our schools in the first place. So we want to make absolutely certain that we never change the narrative, that we never bring the truth, that we never expose our children to the things that we're responsible for, good or bad. We got to stand up and own our own history. And so on this program and other programs on this network, we intend to do just that, to bring you that kind of information. Now, today is Veterans Day. Let's stop for a moment and think about what that means. Veterans Day. This is the day that we stop and we think and we show our appreciation and our gratitude to those that served in our militaries. That is not Memorial Day. So you don't have to have given the ultimate sacrifice. You don't have to have been killed. It's just Veterans Day. And what the role the veterans played and how we were chosen in the first place. Now, I'm a proud member of the United States Army. My drill sergeant told me on day one when I told him it was raining, and he said, "Soldier, it doesn't rain in the Army. It rains on the Army. So shut up, fall back in line, make sure you got your rations because we're going to be gone for 3 days." And so being a veteran means that you have unique experiences. You have the experiences that you could not have acquired anywhere else in the world, and you have horror stories, and you have memories of all of the tragedy that went along with being that, but you also have memories of the wonderful times, the moments that you shared in other parts of the world with different people. And you also realize that you were treated differently in other countries, that the black man was not as hated in other countries as he was in the United States of America. And so being a veteran had a somewhat duality. We love this country, we serve this country, and we just want the country to love us and serve us. And this is a day that I have the opportunity to remind all of those in leadership positions, that we ought not forget about our veterans, that we ought to have programs and policies in place specifically designed to help those that guaranteed our freedom. Now, as a 21-year-old young man, thought that I had gotten away from the Army back in 1968, having graduated from Alcorn State College long before it became Alcorn University, State University. And so, that declaration of university was bestowed on all HBCU schools the same day. Didn't have anything to do with the curriculum or the policies or how many doctorate degrees that you were bestowing on others. The founding fathers in the state of Mississippi just decided that they're all going to become universities. And one day I'll do some research to find out why they made that declaration. But back to the story. So it's 1968. I'm graduating from Alcorn State University. Now I have my BS degree in my hand, and I leave Alcorn State University and return back to Farm Haven, Mississippi. That's about 15 miles east of Canton, Mississippi, and 15 miles west of Carthage, Mississippi, right near the county line. It's so close to the county line until my grandfather's house was on the line. He could be in his bedroom and be in Madison County, and then he would walk over in his living room and he would be in Leake County. And so that's where I returned to after having graduated from college. And one day we're going to spend some time talking about my experiences and how I got to college in the first place. But today we're talking about Veterans Day. So having graduated from Alcorn State University, I didn't have a clue in the world as to what I was going to do that day, having graduated. So standing on the porch in Farm Haven, Mississippi as a college graduate, my choices and opportunities were very, very limited. Or I could probably get a school teacher's job, and I probably could work on the farm, but that was about it in Mississippi. There were no industries that we were aware of. There was no opportunities in banking and finance. There was none of that going on in this Mississippi. So I was standing there, and a young man came by and said, I want to go to California, and I need someone to help me drive. I looked at my brother Coleman, and I said, I don't know. Should I go to California with Willie Watts? And he said, why not? And I said, why not? So I got in the car, and I helped him drive to Los Angeles, California. Now, me having come from Mississippi and me having had superior training from African-American males, when I got to California, I naturally gravitated to African-American dominated industries. So I went to work there for a manufacturing company in Watts, California in '68, after having arrived there in May of 1968. Well, I did that for a while, and then I got this letter that said that I had been drafted into the Army. Well, it didn't say into the Army. It just said that I had been drafted by the United States military, and I was to report in 5 days. Now I didn't want to go to the army. That I had a college degree. I knew people in 1968. Vietnam War was as horrific as it had ever been. People were getting killed every day. I had family members that didn't return home. I had people that lost their faith in God and our family members because their children and their brothers and their sisters and were all hurting because they lost loved ones in that ugly war. And now here I am as a college graduate, thought I had missed the draft because normally at 18 is when you would get those papers. And normally you would think if you were a college graduate that you wouldn't have to go. Well, anyway, I got drafted. And so I didn't want to go, so naturally for the next day or two after having left my job, because I knew I had to prepare myself to go in the military, for the next day or two, I just went to one party, a going away party after the next going away party, and they lasted most of the night. And so on the day that I was supposed to arrive at Fort Ord, California, I didn't show up. And so about 3 days later, I was at home in my apartment, sitting on my couch, and a hard knock came on my door. I went to the door, and there stood two gigantic military police that looked at me and said that I was AWOL. I never knew what AWOL stood for. It's absence without a leave. And they said that you are now going to be placed into military prison because you have failed to report for active duty. And I said, well, give me some time to get myself together. And they said, no, we're not going to give you any time. You've already had a week to report, and you didn't report, so we are leaving now. I said, well, what about my furniture, and what about all of my clothes? He said, we are leaving now. And so they escorted me up to Fort Ord, California, to be inducted into the military. Now, I keep saying military because during the induction process, you in this line, you just follow the yellow line. So there are hundreds of young men of all races in line. And so you follow this yellow line, and then if one line led to the Marines, one line led to the Air Force, one line led to the Army. And so you didn't know where you were going or what was going to happen to you. It just all depended upon the luck of who was the last person that went to the yellow line for the Marines. So my fortune said that I was going to be inducted into the United States Army. So I went into the Army in 1969 and was shipped into basic training. And boy, did my life change after that. We're going to go to a station break. Afterwards, we're going to come back and continue this journey, my experience in this military on this Veterans Day. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
It's more than a card. It's a complete mobile banking service that's accountable to all of us. You'll get a no-credit check debit card good anywhere Visa is accepted to make purchases, deposits, even get or transfer cash with an FDIC-insured bank account managed from our smartphone app. There's even a pre-approved no-interest line of credit if you need emergency cash. So why go to the bank when you can have ours in your pocket? Get accountable. Just download our app today.
Welcome back to Socrates Garrett Live. If you're watching us on Facebook, send us stars. Call in at 800-492-5186. You're watching us on YouTube, then go on and subscribe to the program, to the channel. We need your support. Enjoy all of the clips and reels that you'll find on Instagram and TikTok. We're trying to push the information out. It's critically important that our young folk of today understand the experiences so that maybe they will gain some appreciation and some respect for the path that we have created for them, how we have tried to remove some of the obstacles out of their path. We probably haven't done a very good job, and that's why our young folk of today don't listen much. And that's why they act out a lot, because we have not prepared them for the struggle that they're finding themselves in today. But we're talking about my experience in the military. So again, I'm in Fort Ord, California, long ways from Farm Haven, Mississippi. I'm 2,000 miles away from that day that I was standing on the porch back in Farm Haven, Mississippi. I don't know anybody out there at all. I'm a 21-year-old man that has found himself under the control of the United States government. And so I was put in the Army, and I went into basic training. And my life started to change, because while I had been disciplined by my father and by those that were in leadership position over me as a young man growing up in Mississippi, I didn't know anything about the discipline that was getting ready to come to me in the Army in my preparation to go to war. Now, I understood about discipline. I come from a family that had disciplined all of his children. I understood that. My father only told you to do something one time. If he had to tell you again, you would be getting up off of the floor. I understood discipline. My grandfather had 5 boys. All 5 of those boys ran away from home before they were 18 years old. They ran from Farm Haven, Mississippi, all the way up to Gary, Indiana, not running from the white man, but running from my grandfather, running from their daddy, because he was a disciplinarian. He wanted them to work all day, part of the night. You didn't go anywhere. Your life was there to work for him. So they ran away. And so I understood discipline, but the military's form of discipline was a little bit different. Because the drill sergeant said to me, he said, "Garrett, I'm going to give you an order, and I'm going to tell you this one time. And you are going to learn to follow my command immediately." And I thought about it for a second, being rebellious because I didn't want to be there in the first place. And I didn't like white folk telling me what to do. I never had that experience. I understood that in 1968 and 69, that white folk were ugly and that my life was always threatened. And so I found myself now having to obey the person who I thought, if they had their way, that they'd rather I not exist. But the drill sergeant said to me, he said, I'm going to tell you something, you're going to learn to do it in one time, and you're going to do it immediately. He said, now let me explain to you why. He said, because if you don't do it immediately, you're going to be dead. And I thought about that. That was a different twist, a different look upon the training. He said, if I tell you it's incoming, you're not going to ask me why or when, where. You're trained to immediately roll and get in the fetal position to try to survive the income, putting your helmet on and your poncho over your head. He said, that's the only chance of surviving and living you're going to have, is to follow instructions immediately. So I learned, I said, well, I'm in this situation. 90% of the inductees and draftees in the Army in Fort Ord, California, about 50% were Hispanics, about 40% were Europeans, about 10% black. It's in California, Fort Ord. Now, I get it. I came out of an environment where it was 80, 90% black. Even though, let me explain how that works. Even though I come out of Mississippi, I really never encountered white people as a boy. We had our little conclave there. We had our communities there. We went to black schools. We went to black churches. We went to black sporting events. And I really never came in contact with white people. And if I did come in contact with them, it was a dangerous situation. I was as afraid of them as a possum was of an axe handle. And so I didn't know much about how to respond to them. So I'm in this military, and now I find myself as one of two people in a whole platoon. Now, interestingly enough, and this is something that I'll never understand today, I got a platoon now of about 100 soldiers. And now the drill sergeant appointed me as the team leader. So now I have to give the orders and instructions to the rest of the platoons. And I'm 140 pounds, 5'7". An awesome responsibility. So now I have to develop leadership skills. I already had leadership skills, having been taught by Lawrence C. Jones down at Piney Woods and by W. Garrett up in Farm Haven. I had some leadership skills because I observed leaders. Didn't have leadership skills because I had been put in a leadership position. Although I will say that going to an HBCU developed leaders as a more so than scholars. It just didn't develop me. But an HBCU, the significance about an HBCU is that you are put in the positions of leadership because you're the student body president, you're in charge of the choir, you're in charge of the media, you're chairman of the chemistry department, you're the dorm directors, you're administrative director. So you get put in leadership positions at an HBCU that you would never, ever see in a white school in the SEC. And so we may not have created many physicists and many engineers, because we didn't have no engineering program in the first place. It was Alcorn A&M, Agricultural and Mechanical School, one of the oldest land-grant universities in the country, created by the federal government to try to educate black children that had been denied college educations in traditional systems. So I got some leadership skills, but now here I am, the platoon leader of 150 men platoon, and I'm calling the cadence, and I'm making sure everybody gets in step, and I'm making absolutely certain that we're in the best shape that we can possibly be. Because I had the experience once. We were out on a 100-mile run, and when I say that, I don't mean that in a day, but before we going to complete this task, it will be 100 miles. And we're at it every day, and we had a designated young man that was the medic, and soldiers were falling out on the run in the heat with the weight on their back. And that M16 rifle was as heavy as I was, and we're jogging and we're singing and we're shouting. There ain't no need of going home. Jody got your girl and gone. Am I right or wrong? You're right. And when I said you're right, your right foot better hit the pavement. That's how serious we were. So once we were out on that run, and the young man fell out, and I stopped the platoon and I said, someone get the medic. And we couldn't find the medic in the whole platoon. So finally I said, roll him over. They rolled the soldier over, and it was the medic. And I thought about that. It's an awesome responsibility that we all have in life. You ought not be the medic if you're not in shape. If you're going to be the first one to fall out, then you ought to decline the position of being a medic. And it goes true in life. If you don't have the stamina, if you can't keep your grind up, if you can't go the distance, you ought not have that position. I'm reminded of Michael Jordan saying that I never lost a basketball game in my life. I just ran out of time. And that's the attitude that was required to survive and to prosper, and it's still what is required today, yet very few people have that attitude or willing to subscribe to that grind. Now, I've gone over the time that I have allocated for me this afternoon, but I'm going to come back tomorrow and continue this story, because my experiences in the United States Army, there's so much to unpack there. The training, how you assign an MOS, where you're going to go, how you're going to be prepared, and what are you going to do with the adversary that's coming your way. This has been Socrates Garrett Live, broadcasting from right here in Jackson, Mississippi. We need your support. We need your support to continue this broadcast and bring you other stories and enlightened conversations about what's real, what's really happened, and what's really going on today. So until we come together tomorrow, I want you to stay safe and good evening.